I'm Ed Amoroso from Tag Cyber, and I'm sitting here with Tony Cole and Carolyn Crandall, who both work at Attivo Networks. Wonderful to see you both.
Good to see you.
Welcome to Manhattan.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll start with you, Tony. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into this. Probably a lot of people watching who wonder how you get to work for such a cool company as Attivo Networks. How'd you get into it?
Well, I'm a retired Army and was in cybersecurity for many years in cryptography. And the last thing I did at the Pentagon was try to bring honeypots in there and fought with a lot of lawyers. So when I left, I went into that field, which quickly got shut down as Symantec acquired that and really wasn't focused in that area. It's kind of ahead of its time. But the point is that over a long career in cyber, since I retired back in 2002, I've kind of watched this space and was really interested to see as virtualization took off and we started to see a really good set of frameworks for many different tools and software-defined networking come out, that this was an interesting space to be in. So conversation started with Attivo Networks, and about 7 months ago, I actually jumped ship at FireEye and came over and joined them. So I've been having a blast.
It's so cool. Government, I guess, was maybe the original user of deception. I have this image of blow up tanks and things like that.
Ghost Army.
Is that really where it all came from? Militaries using it?
Yeah, I've done a lot of presentations on it since I've been here. It's a fascinating space. The history side of deception being very, very successful to win many, many battles over many millennia. It's driven, as you just mentioned, the Ghost Army in World War II, it helped actually confuse the Nazis on where, D-Day was going to happen. So it's about time, since every CISO admits they're under attack, that we bring deception to play in the cyber realm.
Yeah. And you said in the early days you were in government kind of lobbying for using honeypot and other types of things. In a military context or more just
military at the Pentagon, and we had a lot of lawyers try to stop us as we were even battling at that point just with banners, so on different systems.
Building software-defined blow-up tanks.
Yeah.
So funny. Yeah. That's great. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Join us. Now, Carolyn, you and I have been talking for so long. It's wonderful to see you. And
great to see you too.
You've been in this business for a while. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. No, I've been in high tech for I can't believe I'll say 30 years or so now, and I had the good
started when you were in kindergarten.
Just about, yep. So I joined Attivo about 3.5 years ago, back at a time where we spent a lot of time going, well, why are we bringing deception? From a commercial level. I know military's thought about it a lot, but on a commercial level, why are we bringing deception into the fold and answering all the questions like, does it work? Is it really complicated to use? Do we really need this, or is this just a luxury item that I should add on last? And so it's been amazing over the last 3.5 years to see the company grow, to see the demand grow, and now things have turned to curiosity to a full-fledged business and operations for many both mid and enterprise companies. So it's been a very fun ride the last few years.
All those questions you were asking, I assume the answers were all yes.
The answers have all been yes.
If they were no, we wouldn't be sitting here.
No, we wouldn't be sitting here, and I wouldn't be. It's been a phenomenal year for Attivo, and I'll have to tell you, if I look at the changes even in the last year or so, people didn't budget for deception a year ago. This is the first year in 2018 where people have actively come up and said, I have a project, I have a budget, I'm planning for 2019. And so it's definitely a pivot point, and it's a different feel than even a year ago where people have seen the technology's mature, it's proven, it works, and now people are buying it. It's becoming almost a de facto security control for anybody that really is serious about in-network detection and about having a proactive defense, right? Why make it easy for the attackers? Why not set up some landmines, traps, and derail their efforts, or at least make you a more difficult target so maybe they'll choose somebody with a softer underbelly?
I would say there's even more CISOs today that understand that they are high fidelity alerts that you're getting out of the deception solution put in place versus trying to convince them that they're high fidelity alerts like most vendors are always trying to do with their product sets. So I think that's changed the game a lot since so many CISOs are using it and now actually listening to others and starting to roll it out.
Well, let's say, Tony, why don't you share, we've been alluding to deception, obviously. If people are watching, they get the idea that Attivo works generally in that area. But let's help us with the idea. Is this all about, is it about honeypots? Is it about decoys? Is it about just kind of a platform that does all the above? How do you generally, when somebody asks you about the platform, how do you describe it?
Well, if it was a 2-second pitch, I would say
you got more than 2 seconds.
We shrink dwell time. It's that simple. We shrink dwell time, and it's across an entire platform, and it's actually taking back home field advantage by actually layering deception across an entire environment. So from your real assets to decoy systems that incorporate your gold images. So with breadcrumbs and lures and everything that take the adversaries off of your production systems and into our environment that they can't pivot back out of again.
And this would be something that you integrate across your production environment, or do you put it separate, or where do you put the deception?
The decoys themselves, so for the servers and endpoints, are actually done off of your production system. They're not running on it.
Is behind the radar concept?
You can actually drop it off a trunk port, so discover the network, so you can see all the VLANs, learn
Makes
everything.
sense.
So, and then actually deploy it, so where people aren't touching the production at all. CIOs don't have to worry about the CISO coming in and putting more assets across the production side. So it's separate and distinct.
I've heard you guys use the word projection at times.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's specifically what we're doing. We will actually then project deception across the production environment by putting breadcrumbs and lures that will lead the adversary in there. So, and then we can do the same thing for remote offices. We can project the deception out there where the deception actually takes them back into our bot sync environment that they can't get out of.
That's cool. Carolyn, when you're talking to customers, I'm guessing, tell me if I get this right, a few years ago, you probably had to explain what this was about, but I'm guessing that now less so. Am I getting that right?
The conversation has changed. It really started with, well, what is this, right? And a lot of what Tony explained of how does it work, and getting people comfortable that not all deception is alike. So first of all, there are people that believe deception is only out at the endpoint. Let's put some credentials, breadcrumbs, map shares, kind of lure and entice them in. And that will pick up things like credential theft or ransomware. The other side is catch them early during their early reconnaissance and activity. So what we found is that by providing deception technology that creates that blanket both at the endpoint and the network, you can really capture all forms of attack. And so a lot of it was just educating them on, well, what is deception? How does it work? And now the conversation's really around value. So what does it do for me? Reduces the dwell time. It's a very accurate, high fidelity alert that only goes
You said that
off.
a couple of times. The dwell time, meaning an attacker dwelling in some environment. Is that the idea? Is that
Absolutely.
What you mean?
That is. So if you think about it, if the industry averages, call it 100 days, or pick your number, there is opportunity for the attacker to be able to move laterally through the network, escalate their attack, create a foothold, really create a mess of things to have to go back and clean up, especially if they're able to do something like compromise your Active Directory. So the thing is how do you not let them go low and slow in your network for 100 days?
Yeah.
How do you stop them in minutes? Right? So pick them up as they do their early reconnaissance, pick them up as they try to attack your Active Directory, pick them up as they lift credentials and bring them back into your deception environment, where unlike other detection technologies, you're not only detecting, but you're learning, because you can analyze the attack in the deception environment and pick up all their tools, techniques, procedures, the IOCs of the attack, and then fortify your defenses, right? Now you know something about the attacker, what they were trying to do, how they were trying to do it, and you can go back and figure out, well, how did they get to where they were, and button up those holes. And so deception is very unique now in that it's not only that detection piece, but it's the ability to participate in the incident response and make that a more accurate and streamlined experience. And so there's a lot we've done with that, and also with our integration partners. So by having 30 plus integrations, not only we detect the alert, we do the attack analysis and correlation, but then we automatically can block, we can isolate, we can threat hunt through these integrations. So super efficiency, and just takes a lot of work and time. We know that the security teams can do a lot of this, but guess what? We can make it automatic and fast, and it just takes a lot of the manual work out.
Yeah.
My favorite analogy around deception is, because you don't ever hear it, is taking back home field advantage. We're sitting here in Manhattan, and if you're a Jets or Giants fan, invariably most people think, all right, we have an advantage. We're at home this week. Well, when we're defending...
Unless you're a Jets fan, then you never have the advantage.
It's true. I'm still stunned. I'm a Dolphins fan, and we're leading the division. I don't know how that happened. But what's really interesting is we're giving back home field advantage to the cyber defenders, the people that actually own the enterprise, and giving them a means to actually identify adversaries. As Carolyn stated, that are doing that lateral movement where there's so few structures today to actually do that detection as they actually escalate privileges and move around the environment. So we're giving it back to them by actually allowing them to control that environment, move the pieces around, and change the whole chessboard so it's part of their environment, so and the adversaries in their plane in their space.
Yes, let's focus in a little bit on this. As Carolyn shared, this idea of minimizing dwell time, I think of it as like that. In an APT, the P is persistent. You guys are taking a big P and making it really small.
Exactly.
And the question is, can you make it zero? Like, can deception be used to prevent, like if you're watching activity, can you prevent something from happening, or is it always kind of a response sort of thing?
Well, we do prevent some breaches from taking place, so where they're moving laterally and compromising additional systems. We have stopped some attacks right in their tracks where they compromise something, so ransomware, for instance, and we identified it quickly before it spread, and our customers were able to shut it down. But we're not out on that perimeter, external facing piece where you actually are stopping an attack at this point. Although our integration with some partners can actually enable, stopping an attack, but it's not coming from deception.
With deception, this seems like a really good thing. Is it obviously response when something's happening, you minimize. But if you're dealing with early indicated activity and you collect somebody up into a decoy or whatever terminology would be right, you can prevent a lot of subsequent bad things from happening.
Absolutely.
Like, I think it's one of the understated preventive techniques, because we tend to think of it so much in terms of response. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, I agree 100%, because so many people think today when there's a breach, you've been compromised and there's significant impact.
Yeah.
But if you catch the breach early and they're not able to actually, meet their objectives inside your environment, they weren't able to monetize any records they stole, you're able to stop them before they do that, or they couldn't steal the intellectual property they were after, then you mitigated the impact. So from that perspective, we do prevent a significant impact inside the environment by shrinking that time down. It's like somebody kicks in the door to your house and the alarm goes off and they run away. Lesson learned, you need a better door jamb, but nothing was stolen, and no one was hurt.
Yeah. Carolyn, when a customer asks you about whether the technology has some impact on, say, their normal day-to-day IT operations or scanners, or they say, wow, I'm going to put this deception and I'm going to trick our IT team. Well, how do you guys normally, I know you guys are good at explaining exactly how that's a non-problem, but help me understand.
And it's interesting. They actually had a session at the most recent Black Hat of how to get around deception.
Get around deception?
How do you get around it? And of course, I'm like, I got to sit in on this session and see what they're saying and see how that would apply against the Attivo technology. And so a lot of it goes back to, to the believability, right? So if you're able to set up a deception network where they cannot tell what's real and what's fake, you're going to trick not only the external adversary, but you're going to trick insiders, suppliers, other people that are doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And it's not uncommon at all that a very limited number of people know that deception is deployed inside of an environment. For Attivo, we don't mind if people know or don't know, because we've built the product that even if you do, you still can't tell. And we know this works because we constantly go up against pen testers, right? So go ahead, have them go ahead, run their attacks on the network. And we've had several situations, case studies on end, where they'll go in, they'll do their initial investigation, they'll decide what they want to do, and then sure enough, they're going to look around at the network. We're going to catch them during the reconnaissance. We're going to catch them as they try to lift and harvest some of the credentials, and they just don't know because they're so authentic that, well,
like if the production systems are Linux, your decoys are
they're
Linux
as well.
And so it's the same technology, and it's not like you're building some weird Hollywood facade or something.
No, not at all. And so now the difference is today too with machine learning, where people are like, well, this must be really complicated. Well, first, the way that we do this in projecting the deceptions makes it not complicated, but the machine learning of today is going to look at your network. It's going to look at the types of devices, the software, the application, what it's doing on the network, and it's going to match that. So as an attacker goes and looks at it, everything is going to match down to look identical to the environment. So if it looks, feels, operates like the regular environment, how do you tell? Well, you don't, so you go take a look. Well, guess what? When you take a look, we're going to raise an alert because nobody should be engaging. We have no employee production value, and so anybody exploring our environment is doing something they shouldn't. It may just be a policy violation, but it also gives people the opportunity to be proactive, right? Somebody's doing something they shouldn't. Was it a mistake or was it nefarious? And they can go look at that. And it's a great check and balance for suppliers and other insiders. Well, how do you know if somebody that already has privileges is moving around through the network? You're able to tell now. So
That one's fascinating too, because we've seen some customers actually roll it out in complete secrecy and policy violations, and people are walked out the door. And we've seen other customers, roll it out very broadly and tell everybody, and their point is, if you're doing bad things, stop.
yeah, we will catch you.
Interesting, like the idea of stealth versus non-stealth deception has always fascinated me. Like here in Manhattan, you go into a little shop and the guy's got the equivalent of NORAD behind the counter saying, look, I'm watching everything and not hiding anything. But then like if a parent doesn't think very clearly, they suspect a babysitter maybe of harming a child, sometimes they'll hide a camera to catch the babysitter. And I always think, your kid's going to take one more for the team, right? Because you're probably going to leave the kid in harm's way at least one more time.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure people think through philosophically how deception plays in those contexts.
Well, and the good thing is it's early and it's accurate, and so you're not going to wait for that second chance. It's like, and there are, as Tony mentioned, there are people that are zero tolerance. You do something you're not supposed to do, and you're walked out the door, and it gives proof that something wrong is going on, where in a lot of other cases they do have to go back and look for that second incident to happen, because they're like, well, we're not quite sure because we're looking at a behavior or a pattern, so we want to make sure we're right. Well, there's no being wrong with deception. There's no reason for them to be engaging with a deception environment. So you don't have to wait for the second opportunity to go in and say, you know what, you're not allowed to do that.
So should you be deceptive about your deceptive implementation?
Meta deception.
Yes.
So, hey, Tony, is cloud the future of kind of deception deployments? Is that kind of where this is
I think
gravitating?
It is moving in that direction. We're going to have some customers that are going to want to stick to the appliance-based side, I think, for a long period of time. But the vast majority are moving in the cloud direction, and we're right there with them. So, whether it's PaaS or SaaS, it doesn't matter. Software-defined networks, we're building a structure so it actually moves with the customer in whatever environment they actually want to move into. So, and as Carolyn stated, it's why we're so realistic. We're running what they're running, so with their gold images if they wish. So they can build the level of complexity as deep as they want to go. It's, if they want to entertain the adversary for a long period of time, they can, or just utilize it just for the alert side to boot them out, they can as well.
What do you think, Carolyn? Software-defined deception is the next big marketing buzzword?
Okay, it just may be.
Put a little R with a circle after that, right?
Like it.
And we're all set to go.
I like it. Yeah, it's definitely the way the future is going to run. And a big thing about the way that deception needs to be architected is whatever the attack surface is, you need to be able to mimic and look identical to that environment. So other places like IoT, right? So we all know that it's a challenge to be able to secure these devices. Hey, even find out if they're on your network, right? So whatever the attack surface is, you can put deception out there to look identical. So it can look like a point of sale, it can look like an industrial control, it can look like video surveillance cameras. It can do a lot of different things to basically capture the attacker as they're coming in, and they don't suspect it in many cases. And so again, that quick early trigger that says, here's something to look at. So if I just kind of on the thought of where deception is going, if I break it down to the most simple models of that attack surface, you've got to be everywhere that the attacker may think is the weak link or their point of entry. And the other is the believability, which we've talked a lot about today, is how is it absolutely 100% authentic and believable and attractive to the attacker. And we continue to add additional enhancements to continue to attract the attacker regardless of the attack method or vector they're trying to come in under. And you put those two things together and all of a sudden you get a very credible system that looks interesting to the attacker. And a lot of people will talk about, attackers can make as many mistakes as they want, but the defender has to be right all of the time. And there's really a lot of truth to that statement, because now just one error from the attacker and you have an opportunity to boot them out early. So it's really a proactive measure. And then the other piece is really the proactive measures. There's a lot of things that we've discovered with machine learning to give visibility to what's on your network, where your exposed credentials are, what other risks there are, and give you an opportunity to say too, hey, now I know I've got things I need to go take care of. So they would have created a entryway for the attacker to come in, but now you shut those down before they even have a chance. So that's a kind of another nice byproduct of the machine learning discovery we do, is we give a lot of visibility tools as well.
I can see why you sell so many systems. You guys are so clear and interesting and fluid in how you describe the deception and the platform. It's great. You're such good ambassadors for this technique that I think has been underutilized. I hope people watching, if they're not using deception, I hope they give you a call. I assume the website's the good place for them to stop.
It is,
A
attivonetworks.com.
lot of good material.
Yeah.
You and I worked on some material together.
We did, yes.
Yeah,
We've got a lot of great.
Hopefully they'll all read.
Yes, hopefully they'll read the journals and the blogs and the other things. There's a lot of information that's out there today. But the thing that I'd encourage people the most is if you are looking at detecting threats inside the network, which everybody should, because they can and will get in. It's a very super accurate and efficient way to do it, and all the things that people will throw as far as, oh, it's complicated, it's hard, it's like, you know what, it's all push button simple.
And I think it's important to add to that, if it's an IP-enabled device, it's something you should look at for deception, and we're building the integration with your existing tool sets, so on the security side, from the enterprise side, ICS side, point of sale side, across the board. So look to the future in that, that we'll continue to integrate with existing tool sets, so across all areas of IP-enabled devices.
Yeah, it's very exciting to hear, Tony. Well, thank you for coming. And Carolyn, thanks for visiting us here in New York City.
Thank you.
And hopefully you'll come back and visit us again.
Of course, always a
Thank you.
pleasure.
See you. And we will see you next time.